Tonight it's Father's Day, it's just a chance to be with family, so enjoy. Yes, there's a picnic afterwards, where is it? Sandringham. So if you want to join Alison's goodbye picnic at Sandringham, whereabouts at Sandringham Visitor Centre? Car park? Yeah, a bit near the Visitor Centre, at 1 o'clock? Yeah, 1 o'clock. Okay, this is going to be wobbling too much. Okay, so no iron sharpens iron tonight, and in 2 weeks' time, on Sunday the 2nd of July, we're going to be having baptisms again. We've got more people getting saved and wanting to get baptised, so we're going to baptise again on the Sunday the 2nd of July, and we will be, there'll be a bring and share afterwards. We'll let you know more about that next week. Okay, we've been looking at, for the last few weeks, we've been looking at the things that attract the presence of God, and getting rid of fear in our lives, getting rid of things that hinder us in our walk with God, and in being filled with the presence of God. We've been looking at getting rid of fear, being hungry, being thankful, and guess what? Wobbling too much. I haven't got the hang of getting that thing around my ear, so whenever we've got the speaker before, everyone's got different shaped ears. I think we're going to need to get one for each person. So it's moulded to your ear. Okay, so we've been looking at things that getting rid of things that hinder us in just enjoying the presence of God and attracting the presence of God. And this morning I want to look at a character from the Old Testament, a guy called Caleb, who was an amazing guy who had a different spirit about him. God described him as someone with a different spirit. In fact, he was such an amazing guy at the age of around 40, he did something amazing for the Lord. And then when he was 85, he was still full of vim and vigour. My version puts it, other ones put, my eyes are not dim. He carried on right through to the end. And he was just described by God as someone different, with a different spirit. And I thought, that is so helpful to look at somebody like that, who was faithful and full of God and served God all the way through their life, right up to the age of 85 and on. He was confident that God was with him, which is pretty much the definition of the presence of God. It's God with us. Now, just in case you don't know the backstory, because it's back in the Old Testament, it's the early history of Israel, I'm going to give you a bit of a backstory. You see, God has always wanted a people. That was always his intention. Right back in the Garden of Eden, he had a people. He had Adam and Eve that were a people who loved him and knew him. And God always wanted a people who loved him, who were his treasured possession, who he could look after, who could be like a kingdom of priests, bringing God to the nations around, but also be a holy nation, a nation that really loves him and lives in a holy way, like his family on earth. That's what God's intention always is. And now, in our age, that's the people of God. It's us. It's Jewish and Gentile believers in Christ. They're the people of God. They're his people. His treasured possession. Now, back in the early history, God called out a nation of Israel. He called a guy called Abraham to be a blessing and to be a blessing to the nations. And there's a bit of a story of Israel, these fathers, Abraham and Isaac and Joseph. And at one stage in the history, what happened, there was a famine where there was no food, but Joseph had been sovereignly and providentially put in Egypt, and he had become the prime minister of Egypt so that he could save Israel from this famine. And what happened was that there's a long story in Genesis about it, but basically what happened is this fledgling nation of Israel, which is a couple of families, ended up in Egypt with Joseph, and they got cared for, they got the food that they needed, and so on. And they prospered in Egypt. They did really well. They multiplied. The first command in the Bible is go forth and multiply. They did that very well and grew to a big nation and scared the living daylights out of the Egyptians. There's about 1 million of them. So the Egyptians began to oppress them and put them into slavery, because that's what evil people do. And they were put into You know, it's that age-old thing, isn't it? When people get scared, it's the age-old thing with migrants, don't they? People get scared of migrants growing in the country. And that's what Egypt did. They put them under slavery for the next 400 years. And of course, at that time, that people of God kept forgetting about God. And at the end of 400 years, they're crying out in their oppression and their poverty and their slavery. And they're asking God, would you save us? Would you deliver us? So God raises up Moses, who comes onto the scene and delivers Israel, which is about 3 million people, they reckon, at this time. Delivers them from Egypt, out of slavery, brings them out into freedom. They're set free to head towards the promised land. Now, of course, if you've lived in slavery all your life, and for generations you've lived in slavery, your thinking is downtrodden. And so, of course, what happened to these folks were, they're free physically. They are free spiritually, but mentally they are very much still in slavery. And it's a constant battle for them to come out of slavery thinking into freedom. It's kind of like a parallel for us. We are saved physically, you know, we've been set free. Spiritually, we've been set free. But for so many of us, we battle mentally with our old man and what we were like before, and battle with the fact that we're not, but we think we're slaves still of sin and all those sorts of things. And so what was happening was Israel is like people do. They look back, thinking back to the good old days all the time. And the funny thing is that when we look back, we always think of, well, I don't know whether we do or not, but often people think of the good stuff and they forget the bad stuff, and they look back on the bad stuff, and they're you know, at the point when they reach the Red Sea, they're seeing the sea in front of us and they're seeing the army behind us, and they're panicking, looking back to, hey, wouldn't it have been better to die? And it's always very depressing with the Israelites. Wouldn't it be better to die back there? Not die in the sea, not die with the army, but wouldn't it be better to die in slavery? They're looking back in fear. And then when they're hungry, as they get past the Red Sea and they're hungry, and they look back and think, hey, back when we were slaves and dying as slaves, we had meat and we had bread. Now we're hungry and dying. And then a little later, when they were thirsty, they grumbled again, oh, wouldn't it be better when we were back in Egypt? I mean, we were slaves and we were beaten and we were oppressed and we were under forced labour, but we had things to drink. Yeah, they kept looking back and kept grumbling and panicking and living in fear. And of course, when we catch up, we're going to read the story in a minute, we catch up to they are just on the border of Canaan. This is the land that God has promised them, this amazing land that they can live in, a land flowing with milk and honey, which means it's just a great place to be. There's tons of good stuff there. Grapes that are enormous and all these things. Just wonderful place for them to be, and that's where God wants them to be. And so what Moses does is he arranges to send 12 spies to check it out and bring back reports of what it's going to be like. And if you've got a Bible, turn with me to Numbers. We're going to be in Numbers 14. I'm just going to read Numbers 13:20. See, Moses sends these 12 spies out and he says, be of good courage and bring back some of the fruit of the land. Now, it's time was the season of the first grapes. He sends them out. Be courageous, guys. Go and look, check it out, find out what it's like, give us a report of how we can take this land that God's got for us. That's the kind of attitude that they go with. And so they go. These 12 spies go, and they're gone for 40 days, and we're going to pick up the story as they arrive back in Numbers 13:25. So it says this: at the end of 40 days, they returned from spying out the land. And they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the people of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him, we came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. However, the people who dwell in the land are very strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the hill country. And the Canaanites by the sea and along the Jordan. But Caleb quietened the people before Moses and said, let's go up at once and take it, for we are well able to overcome it. Then the men who had gone up with him said, "We're not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are." So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they'd spied out, saying, "The land through which we've gone to spy out is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people that we saw there are of great height. And we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim. And we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them." Then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night, and the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, "Would that we had died in Egypt!" It's depressing again, isn't it? "Or would that we had died in the wilderness! Woe is me! Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the swords? Our wives and our little ones will become prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt? Give us a leader so we can go back." Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation to the people of Israel. And Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of somebody with a long name, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes and said to the congregation of Israel, "The land which we passed through to spy it out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, He will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord. Do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their protection is removed for them. God is with us. Do not fear them." Then all the congregation said to stone them with stones. Nice. But the glory of the Lord appeared to the tent of meeting to all the people of Israel. Wow, what a story. You've got 12 spies who go, 2 come back full of faith because they know God is with them, 10 come back with their knees knocking, and they manage to get the whole nation to panic and cause a disaster that meant that 45 years they're in the wilderness. What a contrast. The fear of the people, right at the end there, you get the fear of the people absolutely panicking and the glory of God falling. What a contrast between fear and glory. And all of the spies saw the good things. They all saw it. They brought back the pomegranates and the grapes in the other accounts of it, and the milk and the honey. But they are filled with fear. But Joshua and Caleb, they've got a different spirit. They're basking in the glory of God, not in fear. And of course, those of you who know your New Testaments know that in 1 Timothy it tells us we haven't been given a spirit of fear. We've been given a spirit of power, love, and self-discipline. And that's what the presence of God does for us. He gives us a spirit of love, of power, and of self-discipline. That we can go out and do the things that God has got for us, not living in fear. It's one of the things that kind of, in a way, repels the presence of God is fear. We need to live fearlessly, like Amy was talking about a couple of weeks ago. And of course, if you read on the story, it didn't work out well for the other spies. They all died of the plague. Fear does us no good whatsoever. So what was different about Joshua and Caleb that attracted God? That attracted God's pleasure over them and His delight over them and His presence? What was it that made them people who walked with God and enter into all that God had for them? They were the only ones that entered the promised land in the end, because they were the ones that didn't give in to fear. They went with the Lord. So there's 4 things I want to pick up. There's loads of things, but I'm going to pick up on 4 because it's hot and you're sitting there sweltering in the humid heat, and the welcome team has sat down now, not keeping the doors open. But that's cool, because it wasn't bringing any breeze anyway, was it? There was no breeze coming through that door at all. Anyway, so the first thing is this. Words are really important. Because the 10 brought words that were discouraging. They took courage away from people. They brought a bad report. They brought a report that tore away faith. They told them the good things and then said, however, they're strong. The cities are fortified. The people are big. The word Anak, the Anakites, means people of long neck. So they weren't just tall, they had freakily long necks. They were scary. They were sons of Nephilim, which isn't just a really weird band from the 80s. I mean, they were the scary, gigantic people that were to be feared. And so they expressed a lot of fear. God's called them. God's given them this land. This is the promised land. They've got promises from God for it, but they're giving into fear. And they expressed it in what I call grasshopper theology. If you notice the wording of that, we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers. We seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers. It's their thinking that is making them grasshoppers. This was a feared nation. Israel had 3 million people. They just trashed the Egyptians coming out of Egypt. There was fear of Israel, and yet we seem to ourselves like grasshoppers. And it's fear. They knew. In just the way that you say that, we seem to ourselves like grasshoppers. You are expressing out loud the fear that they had. And those kind of words that they brought gave 4 responses. Firstly, in verse 1, you get this emotive response. They raised a loud cry and wept all night. Have you noticed how things are worse at night? When you go to bed worrying about something, it is worse, isn't it? And like all the nightmare scenarios, worst case scenarios, you overthink it and it's a complete mess. Yes? Or is it just me? No, it's other people too. Okay? And I'm learning, right, that I will not give in to that at night. If I'm lie down and I'm panicking about something, I get up and I go downstairs and I get a drink and I pray and I read the Bible and then I go to bed and not think about it. Because it's just a nightmare. They wept and cried all night and got themselves in a right tizzy. It's an emotive response that wasn't good. Secondly, it's a faithless response. In verse 2, you see there's a complete lack of faith. They're wishing that they died back in Egypt rather than pushing forward. Both options are death. Would you like death or death? Is what they're giving themselves. No faith whatsoever. Then it's ignorant. They all believe that they're going to die and become prey. And then lastly, that turns into rebellion. Let's get a leader who will take us back into slavery. Gee, thanks. Rather, let's keep the leader who's going to carry us on into freedom. Moses and Aaron. Of course, that provokes Moses and Aaron to fall on their faces before the assembly. So when we start doing things like that with our words and doing negative words and words that are just down and bringing discouragement, it rarely produces the positive response that we need or the faith-filled response that we need. Focusing on the negative and talking down and discouraging and not seeing with eyes of faith what God wants to do rarely produces anything positive. They're really important words in our lives. You know, there's a nursery rhyme that goes, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never break me." That is nonsense. Actually, most of our nursery rhymes are complete nonsense anyway, aren't they? We know that. But "sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never break me" is total nonsense. Words are never neutral. They do convey power, and when we take them on board, they can do positive things and bad things. They can build us up or tear us down. Back in the day, back in ancient times, names were expressed your character or expressed what you did, and often in the Bible would have prophetic symbolism and prophetic destiny for you. So, just as a British example, Baker was the man who baked bread. Cooper was the man who was a cooper, which was the man that made barrels. Moyle? No, I'm not going to tell you what Moyle is. It's not good. It's not good. But names, it means mule, it means stubborn or bald. I'm not taking that on board as my prophetic destiny. Although, it's happening. Yeah, sorry. Done it twice now, haven't I? But in the Bible, they can carry prophetic significance. Caleb, one of the meanings of Caleb is dog. We're rejecting that, aren't we, for Caleb? And dog in the Bible is often a derogatory thing. You know, Gentiles are called dogs. But actually, it was prophetic. Because what are dogs? They are, the nice things about dogs, they are loyal and they are faithful. And so it describes Caleb perfectly. He is loyal and faithful. He's going to be a loyal and faithful. And he was, right through to 85, full of vim and vigour, eyes undimmed, taking the land, going for it. And, you know, just as bad names, and when we say bad things over people, can put us down, we can encourage and bring courage into people. I remember when I wrote my book. I did. I wrote a book. When I wrote my book, I was really nervous about it, because you pour your heart into a book, don't you? You do, you pour your heart. It's really nervous when you're just about to release it to people to have a look at. And I remember sending it to a couple of people to see if they would write the thing on the back, because that's quite cool to have a thing written on the back. And I sent it to Angela Kemp, and I heard nothing back, which made it worse. Because like she didn't reply for months, or a month or two. And I just said to her, I met her, we were going on a plane to somewhere, Turkey, for a conference, a whole bunch of us, and I said, what did you think of it? And then she just poured out for the next 10 minutes the most encouraging things I've ever heard in my life. It was just, I was crying by the end of it. Words are powerful and can bring courage and get us going for it. And bad words can bring down, they can bring the opposite of hope and destiny. I remember, you know, some of you might need freedom from words that have been spoken over you. I know over time that I've had to have it. I know that before I planted my first church, I was on staff at a church, and one of the elders at the church there said, you're never going to plant a church because you're deeply disorganised. Which wasn't massively empowering. And I remember them moving on to the next church where you know, they got sent to, and the guy there just believing in me when I was a completely useless leader. I really was, I think. And he was just so encouraging and so full of faith, and I flourished like really quickly. In about a year, I just was totally transformed just because of the encouragement and blessing that had been said over me. It was an atmosphere of faith and blessing. And so, you know, these things are powerful. Words are powerful. I was reading a superb book the other day called Supernatural Ways of Royalty, which is quite an interesting title for a book, but the essence of the book is that when in the kingdom you're no longer slaves or paupers, we are children of the king, you know, we're sons and daughters of God. And just a breathtaking book that had me undone. You know, sometimes you read a book and you end up crying in the middle. I don't know that everyone else does, but sometimes I read books and I'm crying because God is meeting with me in the book. And there's a section in there about names and things that people say. And I came under just a revelation or realisation that some of the things that I've said to my kids, in particular my son, have not been helpful, especially in moments of anger and crossness and teenage stuff. And I was just so undone by it. I'm sitting there crying, realising the things that I've said that are just not helpful, and just saying, you know, confessing it and you know, and getting the Lord to change my thinking and my mind on this. And then I get home, and it was just great. I just went up to David when he got home and said, look, David, I know I have said things to you that I shouldn't have done. And I'm really sorry, and you know, change it. And I want you, you know, is there any specific ones, anything that I've said that you can remember? He went, no, Dad, there isn't. Yes, thank you, Bob. Thought we were going to have an hour obsession of going through everything I've ever said to him, but just, but I just realised, and actually at the time he then said, Dad, I'm sorry, David. Oh, you know, lovely moment. I want to share that story because I am growing, and I'm desperate for us all to grow. And I think in the last few weeks, there's been moments of things that have happened where I've grown, and life is growth, isn't it? We want to grow as Christians, and sometimes it's a slow, steady growth, and sometimes there's bits where God nails you. We had a friend of ours in one of our churches that used to say, sometimes God hits you around the head with a 2x4, as you go, boom, sort it out. We want to grow, and so I'm sharing that story, telling you I am growing still, and I always want to be growing. I want to be like Caleb, that I want to be full of vim and vigour when I'm 85, because I'm still growing. So words are important. And if you want to attract more of the presence of God and more of the glory of God, watch your words. Watch the things that you say. Let them be encouraging and building up, because that's what Caleb was like. All right? Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth, but only such as is good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. I think the wonderful thing when I was reading that book and I was kind of crying and undone, I then just had an encounter with God of empowerment. You know, as you deal with stuff, God just empowers you again, doesn't he? All right, I need to go quick. Second thing is an attitude of faith. Caleb was, come on, we can do this. We can do this. God is with us. Let's go and overcome. Panic is contagious, isn't it? Don't know whether any of you went to see Dad's Army in the cinema. There's a bit at the start of the film where they're all chasing the baddies. They think the Germans have invaded. And there's a moment where something happens and Captain Mannering is there and there's a bull in front of him. That's what they ended up chasing. And he looks around and everyone's gone. Because panic is contagious, you know? Whereas building up and going for it and come on, we can do this is also contagious. Faith pleases God. Hebrews 11:6 says that without faith we cannot please God. It's faith that pleases God, but we trust Him. Trust Him for things that are doing and things that are going on. In the dark days of the Gateway, about 5 years ago probably now, when we shrunk right down and things were tough, I remember someone just saying to me, should we move to the Scout Hut, which was a smaller venue and a cheaper venue? And I was like, no, we are going to get through this, and by faith we will go for it. Look at it now. Look at us now. We outgrew that venue, and we're here. Faith, an attitude of faith, is so important. God wants us to be like Caleb, have an attitude of faith, grow a Caleb kind of spirit. Challenge us to do that. Third thing is that he was long-term faithful. There is no mention of Caleb. That's not a picture of anyone in the church, by the way. I did look at it and laugh, but that is definitely, I couldn't see any resemblance to anyone in the room, so you're all right. Caleb was long-term faithful. You don't hear of him at all in the 45 years of the wilderness. But clearly, he was faithful. Clearly, he carried on with integrity. Clearly, he carried on with patience. Clearly, he didn't grumble. You know, everyone else had messed up and he stuck for 45 years waiting for the promised land. But he carried on with integrity and faithfulness. And at the age of 85, I'm going to read the quote from Joshua that he then says. He says this, Joshua 14. And verse 11. I am still as strong today as I was in the day that Moses sent me. My strength is now as it was then for war and for going and for coming. So give me this hill country of which the Lord spoke on that day. For you heard on that day how the Anakim were there, the great fortified cities. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall drive them out. He remembered the prophetic word for 45 years. He'd been waiting for it and he was ready for it. He had been faithful and was ready with faith to go for it. He fought the battle. If you read on, you find that he won the territory. If you read on, you find out he was able to give his daughter an inheritance and a legacy. He was long-term faithful. He went for it. He lived for the long term and a legacy. He lived life so he didn't burn out young. You know, too many young people say, I'm going to burn brightly, but you burn like a match, you burn out. He lived faithfully for the long haul. He wasn't given to fear, he didn't speak negatively, he didn't spread fear. He was confident in his God, and he encouraged others and stayed faithful for the long term. I don't like it when the Christian world honours one generation over another. Too often we talk about honouring we're honouring the next generation coming through and getting excited about the next generation, and that we put on the scrap heap, as it were, other generations. I hate that. Okay? We are one generation. Yeah? We are one generation from 0 to 80 something. Right? We're one people, and God wants to use people of every single age group as much as the other. Amen? So, let's try an experiment. I think noughts and tens is not going to work because they can't say anything. But there's noughts and tens, are there? Wait for noughts and tens or say something. Pete, did you got noughts and tens? Yeah. There. Okay, over tens. Are there any over tens in the room still? Or are they out in the kids' work? 10 to 20. Okay, 20s. Got 10 to 20s at the back. Say yeah. Thank you. 20s. Say yeah. Thanks, Vicky. 30s. Yay. See, you get more life in you. 40s. Yay. 50s. Yay. 60s. Yay. 70s. Yay. Get in. 80s. Right, we need some 80s. Where's some 80s? 80s, yes! Okay, 20s, let's give you a chance to redeem yourselves.
Yay!
It's amazing though. I was hoping that you were going to have a volume commensurate with the number of you that there are, and the volume would have stayed fairly constant all the way through. It's wonderful that we've got a church that has got all sorts of different coloured hair. Okay? It's not all grey or balding. We've got lots of ages. Alright? And that's wonderful. And I just think it's so super important that we work for the long haul and that we don't burn ourselves out. And you have a great pace of life led by the Spirit, serving God in every decade of your life and not backing down, not blowing it and going for it. Alright? If you want to get some more detail on that, it's a super book by a guy called Gordon MacDonald, who's in his 80s now. But it's called A Resilient Life, and it's just a brilliant book about living for the long haul. Particularly, read this if you're over 40. Right? It's just so helpful. He talks about the mistakes that he made in his life and marriage in his 40s, and it just helps you to not make the same mistakes. So we can be like Mr. Blacklock there, going for it in our, whatever decade it was, 70s. Come on. Okay, last thing, 2 minutes. Awareness of God's presence. He knew that he couldn't succeed without it. He said God is with us. In Exodus 33, 14, God said to Moses, my presence will go with you. And he said, I will give you rest. And Moses said to him, where's the quote? Moses said to him, if your presence will not go with me, do not bring us up from here. For how should it be known that I found favour in your sight, I and your people? Is it not your going with us, so that we are distinct and are your people from every other people on the face of the earth? We need God's presence. And Caleb was aware of God's presence. He was aware that God was with us. We can go for this, we can do this. And we need to cultivate that attitude of being aware of his presence, being listening to the whisper of the Spirit in what to do in daily life. We need to go for it with time with God. Spend some time with God every day. Enjoy his presence. Worship. Pray. Read the Bible every day. Get close to God. I love it when we were delivering food to Jackson, on the TV is like YouTube playlist of worship music. It was just an atmosphere of worship in the house. Let's cultivate the presence of God in our lives and going with him and listening to him. I journal my prayers and the things that the Lord speaks to us. And I'm listening for the voice of the Spirit in my daily life, that I can just be a blessing and a help. Cultivate that attitude of gratitude that David Blacklock talked about the other week. Be thankful. Be thankful. Don't moan about the heat. Be thankful. Be thankful for the things that God has got for us and has done for us. And let's learn to live fearlessly, so that we can have that spirit that Caleb had. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for the example of Caleb. We thank you that right through his life he was faithful to you. He had a different spirit. He loved you, believed you, was aware of your presence, stayed faithful. God, we want to be like that, Lord. We don't want to burn out. We don't want to blow it. We don't want to walk away from you. We want to stay faithful to you. Help us, Lord, to be aware of you and your presence every day. God, help us to take time to listen and pray and enjoy your company every single day. We want to walk by the Spirit in our daily lives and be a blessing and see your kingdom extended in this place, Lord God. Lord, help us to be like the 2, not the 10. In your name, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Okay. Wonderful. I think it's time to grab some tea, coffee, cold drinks, cookie or whatever, have a chance to chat, talk to people that you've not met before. There's lots of new people around, so do go up to someone that you don't know and chat. Next week, we'll be continuing our series. The week after that, we're going to be baptising, so if you want to get baptised, do let us know. God bless you. Thank you.